Hey everybody, it's Trags, Mike Petralia, back with another episode of the Jungle Roar podcast. The episode right before 2025 Bengals training camp begins, and nobody better to join me on this podcast to talk about all things Bengals than Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com. Does a great job for that website along with James Rapine, and Jay has it all covered from STEM to stern, as we like to say. Jay, are you ready for training camp to begin?
STEM to stern to stats. And yes, I am ready for training camp to begin. Ready to start writing about real football and not all this. Well, I imagine we're still going to be writing about
we
Shamar
are.
and Trey
It's
Hendrickson.
part of the gig, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It's what we have to do. We have to write about the contract stuff. But once the contract stuff is out of the way, certainly it'll be good to talk about all the positional battles that'll be going on that really take place every single training camp. And before we go on, I want to remind everybody this podcast, this edition of the Jungle Roar Pod, is brought to you by our great friends at All Good Home Improvement and Prize Picks, and of course CLNS Media. All right, Jay, we were both at Mock Turtle Soup, which is also known as Bengals Media Day on Monday inside Paycor Stadium. And I thought, and I wrote this for CLNSCincy.com, whenever Mike Brown speaks, it's worth listening to, it's worth reporting on, because we don't always get that chance to talk to the owner of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I thought what he had to say about both Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart was telling, in that he still has optimism in both agreements getting done. Maybe one a little bit more quickly than the other. I think certainly Shamar Stewart is a matter of days away. If you listen to Mike Brown, Trey Hendrickson may be a little bit longer than that.
I kind of came away from it yesterday thinking the opposite. It seemed like there was more optimism for Trey and more of a dug in, just kind of butting heads with the Shamar camp. And I was thinking about it, I was like, was it what they said that made it sound so optimistic with Trey, or was it just a contrast with the way they were talking about Shamar and his agent, and kind of not really shots fired, but some little digs taken? And whatever you thought the optimism level was for Trey Hendrickson yesterday changed today with his post where he's still in Florida. And then, it seems like every time this happens, every time the Bengals make any sort of comment, and nothing was said derogatory about Trey or anything yesterday. Like I said, it seemed pretty optimistic, but anytime they come out with anything, it's like the day later, he's coming with the counterpoint and is taking some shots at the organization. So I don't know. It's one of those things. I'm not sure either of these get done now anytime soon.
Well, I guess with regard to Mike Brown, when he said we have no intention of offending Trey Hendrickson, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, I don't want to, offend Trey. I don't want to insult Trey Hendrickson. But then you read that Trey Hendrickson said to Manti Te'o on Good Morning Football that the latest offer from the Bengals was atrociously low. And then he repeated himself, atrociously low. And that, according to multiple reports, has to do with the guaranteed money. What do you think that situation, what do you think the dynamic is between Trey and the Bengals over the guaranteed money, which, by the way, I have felt all along this was going to come down to the guaranteed money, not the AAV.
Yeah, and I didn't know when Mike said that. I don't want to offend. It's like, what could you say that would offend Trey? And he prefaced it by saying, I don't want to get into the negotiation. So maybe he was like, well, we don't think he's worth it because he's this age, or we don't think he's worth it because he's not good against the run. All the things that you have to do to kind of poke holes in a guy's game when you go into the negotiations like this. I don't know what the guarantees. I mean, you see TJ Watt and Max Crosby and Myles Garrett, and these guys getting 3 years guaranteed. And according to Trey, the Bengals are only offering 1 year guaranteed. And that's big, because he has said he's not trying to reset the market. He's not asking to be the highest paid which he could after back-to-back 17 and a half seasons leading the league last year. He could absolutely ask for that. But it's glaring if you think about it, because TJ Watt plays in the same division, and he's actually 2 months older than Trey, and the Steelers were still willing to step up and give him 3 years guaranteed, and the Bengals aren't willing to do that. And that's kind of been their MO forever, but they changed that. They gave Joe Burrow all that guarantee money, and they've got multiple years of guaranteed money for T and for Jamar. So Trey has a right to be like, well, what about me? So that is going to be the sticking point. You would think if one offer is 1 year and Trey's asking for 3, then just make it 2 and get it done and get him on the field. But it's not as easy as that. And again, the it's not just the acrimony, it's the public acrimony that just makes it feel like both of these situations are a little bit different. And we all know the Bengals don't blink in these negotiations, and Trey and Shamar's agent and this public calling out, it's not going to help them. And it's more likely going to hurt them, because the Bengals are going to be even more dug in.
I think it is not a stretch to say, Jay Morrison, that the public sentiment certainly falls on Trey Hendrickson's side a lot more than Shamar Stewart's side. Most of that is because of the way Zach Hiller, the agent for Shamar Stewart, the first-round pick of the Bengals, has handled things publicly. First, it was about the contract language, about the default language. Then it was about the money. Now it's back to the default language. And I'm curious from your perspective, Jay, the way Zach Hiller has handled this for Shamar Stewart, and Duke Tobin's comments on Monday that he doesn't blame Shamar Stewart. He's hired Zach Hiller to handle his business. The Bengals' bigger issue is with Zach Hiller, not Shamar Stewart. I thought that was significant.
Yeah, it was. And it's almost like neither side knew what they were walking into in these negotiations, and they should have. Zach has a history of being difficult, and the Bengals have a history of being hard-headed and not capitulating to demands. You're not going to force them to do anything. And it's like they both walked into this blind, like not knowing what they were getting into. And it's really, really strange. And I agree with you. I feel like the public sentiment is much more on the side of Trey Hendrickson. And I don't know that it has anything to do with the agent so much as Trey has skins on the wall, and he's proven what he can do in this league, where Shamar has not. And not only has Shamar not done anything in this league, he didn't have great production in college. And so it is a lot of just banking on athleticism and potential. And I think a lot of people, a lot of fans of the team that just kind of read the snippets and don't really dive into it, look at that and saying, what's this guy's right to hold out? He has not proven anything in this league. And that's not the case with Trey. He has proven a lot in this league, and that is going to get fans on your side.
I think it was Zach Taylor on Monday that pointed out one of the things that I think people overlook about Shamar Stewart's potential impact on this team. It's not just as a pass rusher. He was drafted not to become the next Trey Hendrickson. He was drafted to become really the next Sam Hubbard.
Yep.
Because he hasn't gotten after the quarterback in college. He hasn't put up tremendous numbers, but he's very, very good and strong against the run. That's where, and if you take a look at the Bengals the last couple of years when they have struggled in short yardage situations, they have not been able to stop the run, and especially stop the run on the edge. And that is a place where I think the Bengals really would like to have Shamar Stewart on the field.
Yeah, and another comparison with Sam is, Sam's rookie year, they moved him inside a lot. And I think that is, they even said it yesterday, that would be the plan for Shamar, that yes, his freaky athleticism, they think can translate to the NFL as a pass rusher, but he's got that strength where he can move inside and affect the quarterback from the defensive tackle position. And then he is also great at setting the edge, not just stopping the run, but chasing down the run if it goes the other way, or if somehow the guy gets out inside of him. There's just a lot to like about his ability. And a big reason the production wasn't there is because Texas A&M had a really, really good defensive line, and teams weren't going into deep drops. They were doing what the Steelers did to the Bengals last year, the quick game, just 1, 2, 3, get it out. And so that's going to be hard to sack quarterbacks when every team you're playing is approaching it that way. But yeah, I agree with you that he is more of a comp at this moment to Sam than he is to Trey. But at the same time, it feels like he was drafted to be the heir apparent to Trey because they already knew Sam was retired.
Sticking on the defensive side of the ball and speaking with Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com and SI.com, Logan Wilson. And I asked defensive coordinator Al Golden about Logan Wilson, and he expects Logan Wilson to be the heart and soul of the defense, the anchor of the defense. How Logan Wilson plays is how our defense is going to play him. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but I thought that was very indicative of what Al Golden and the team in general, their expectations for Logan Wilson to have a bounce back year this year.
Yeah, and I think he will. You know, the injury, he wasn't playing well before the injury, and then the injury cut his year short. But they talk about it all the time. It's not cliche that it's a defense in particular. It's offense too. It's football, but it's not one guy. It's 11 working together for the common goal. And you think about it with a linebacker like Logan, he's hamstrung by inefficient play in front of him on that defensive line was not good against the run. And behind him, the safeties were really poor against the run. And that just, you start trying to do too much and trying to overcompensate for the shortcomings of the people around you. And I think they haven't made a lot of additions. I mean, they didn't get any new safeties. They did, but ones that you realistically expect them to play. And just a few additions at defensive tackle, just a couple the other day, Sunday. TJ Slayton will be a big one. But just getting that defense in position and Al's scheme and getting everybody ready to go, you expect them to be better. And just by proxy, you expect Logan to be better. But then I think it goes beyond that because I do think Logan's a very prideful player. He's a very good player. We've seen it in the past. And I do think this is going to be a good candidate for, I don't know, there's no such award for bounce back player of the year. I don't know if he would qualify for comeback player of the year just because he only missed a few, he missed 7 games last year. But I do expect him to come back in a big way and be a big part of this defense. I think this defense is going to really excel like they did last year. Maybe the only area they excelled in last year was taking the ball away, and that's one of Logan's specialties.
Speaking with Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com. Want to tell you about Prize Picks, the very best place to turn your sports knowledge into cold, hard cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup is not perfect, and nobody's perfect. We all know that. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Every Friday is Flex Friday. Make sure you opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Back with Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com. I think Dan Picture's pretty high on Chase Brown, wouldn't you say, Jay? After he's saying that Chase Brown will be a focal point of the Bengals offense this year.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a continuation of what we heard from him, at the end of minicamp or right at the start of minicamp when he did his last press conference, and even through OTAs, even last year toward the end of the year, where Chase was just one of the best running backs in the league in terms of yards from scrimmage once Zach Moss went out and he became the main guy. And I do expect that I expect him to be a bigger part of game plans going into games, but then also if things go according to plan for this team and the defense is better, the offense is the same or better, they're going to have leads in the second half of games. They're not going to be just playing these back and forth games like they were last year. And you start getting a lead, you start leaning into the run game a little bit more. And I think everything we've seen from Chase has been really impressive, save for a couple fumbles. You know, he had the fumble against the Giants that didn't hurt him. He had the fumble against the Ravens that absolutely turned that game around. But beyond that, yes, I would not be surprised if he sets career highs in rushing yards and receiving yards this year, and is as Dan said, a focal point of this offense, not just a side note.
I think the biggest matchup that we're going to be looking at, though, in terms of roster battles going into camp and throughout camp into the preseason, the right guard and left guard positions, and how crucial that is going to be for, I think, giving Joe Burrow that peace of mind going into the season that not only are my two tackles, Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims, set on the outside, the play in front of me, in my face, is going to be much better this year. I'm going to have maybe that extra second to look downfield or read the defense. And obviously they believe, and they've felt this way since the night they drafted Dylan Fairchild, that he is going to step in and be the guy at the left guard position, and whoever it is, Cordell Volson or someone else, is going to have to beat him out. On the right guard position, Lucas Patrick and Cody Ford. Those two positions, how much are you looking forward to watching those position battles unfold?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. And I what's really going to tell it is in the preseason games, because they are going to play their guys, and that's where you can really judge offensive line play. It's so hard in practice when you know it's not full contact. They're busting it on the O line, but the run game, they're not tackling to the ground. But I agree with you, because they are not investing, but there's just so much expectation on Dylan Fairchild to come in and win this job and be the guy. And they just don't have a good history of drafting and developing offensive linemen. And so you have to have that skepticism in the back of your mind. And I thought it was really interesting how they said, you know, we saw it with Frank Pollock. We've seen it for years with no matter who the O-line coach was here, where there's a lot of cross-training going on between guard and tackle and between left guard and right guard.
Right.
And it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case this year. It's going to be Dylan Fairchild and Cordell are going to be on the left side, and it's going to be Lucas, Cody Ford on the right side. And they need both of those spots to be solid, because like you said, Joe's been very outspoken about this, where he's okay with pressure off the edge. He feels like he can make those guys miss. That's kind of his job, to make them miss. When the pressure comes in your face up the middle, that's a different animal, and that does give him fits. And like you said, if they can give him look at the numbers he put up last year. You give him one extra second, and he could blow those numbers out of the water. So it is, and it's not just pass blocking; it's in the run blocking too. And going back to Chase Brown and getting him going, I do think those are two big positions to watch. There's not a lot of position battles on this team, and those are the main ones in my mind, and particularly the left guard one, because that's a lot to ask for a third-round pick, a rookie, to come in, and he's going to have rookie moments. And how much can they live with, and how much of a leap can Cordell Volson make under Scott Peters? That one particular, not both guard positions, yes, but left guard is where I am really going to be focused.
I asked Dan Picture about Jermaine Burton, and it was interesting, his answer to me. I thought it was an interesting answer, that he's going to get the reps. He's going to get the reps in training camp practices. He's certainly going to get the reps if he stays healthy and does what he has to do, get the reps in preseason games. But when he said, when I asked him, what did he show you? He said, well, he showed me that he could show up and be on time. And that wasn't just in reference to being on time in practice, being on time with the plays. It meant be where you're supposed to be throughout meetings, throughout whatever it is, a team activity inside the building, team practice and OTAs. Be where you're supposed to be. I thought that was a very telling comment from Dan Picture, and an optimistic one that I think they do believe that Jermaine has taken another step in maturity this year, or will take that step.
Yeah, I agree. It's, trust was broken last year, and it's hard to repair that. But all you can do is try, and I do think that there's optimism there, because it was. I don't know that we went more than a couple weeks without him having an issue last year. And you talk the offseason, you've got late April through mid-June where he did everything right. That's a big step forward. And you hope for his sake, for the team's sake, that can continue. And Jermaine was pretty open. I can't remember which day in camp it was in OTAs, but it felt like he was going to decline all interviews, and he agreed to talk, and he talked for a long time, and he was pretty open and honest about where he messed up last year and how he's in so much of a better headspace this year. And, if he can stay there, and, everybody said it last year, first round talent, they got him in the third round because of those issues, those immaturity issues. You get that straightened out, and you add that guy to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Mike Gesicki and Chase Brown and Joe Burrow. I mean, that would be huge for this offense and a nightmare for defenses. And, I like Jermaine. He seems like a really good young man. I don't want to say kid, because that's a little disrespectful. He's a grown man.
Right.
And you just hope that the light stays on and he stays where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there.
In special teams, that's where he could also make an impact with Charlie Jones. If both Charlie and Jermaine Burton could be on the field at the same time in their kick returns. And Darren Simmons made reference to this, and I think it was you that asked the question about whether or not, or maybe it was Paul Daner, one of you asked this question about Charlie and Jermaine Burton being kick returners on the field at the same time. It's harder for teams to defend when you have two explosive players on the field at once, and it's going to come down to whether or not the special teams units, especially the punt return units, have enough quality blockers in front of them. But that also lends itself to another explosive part of the Bengals artillery, if you will, in terms of special teams.
Yeah, and Charlie's kind of in the same boat. He's done what he's supposed to do, but he's just been bit by injury bug. And can he stay healthy? I don't know which way they would go on punt return, because you're going to have one guy back on punt return, but that is intriguing because with the new kickoff rules, we saw that a lot last year where teams would put two guys back there. And I thought I was really impressed with Jermaine in his return game last year, because I remember he returned kickoffs against the Bears in that preseason game, and he had some really good returns in that game. And I asked him afterward, when was the last time you returned a kickoff? And he said he never had. So a guy that raw, maybe a couple practices, and he's doing that in a game situation, even though it's preseason. There's a lot of potential there, and I think that's the key for him to either make the roster or more likely make the game day active rosters if he's going to be active on special teams. I don't know that he would be active on game days just as a fifth or sixth wide receiver. Well, fifth, they rarely dress six.
Speaking with Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com. All Good has been helping homeowners for 32 years. When looking for a home improvement company, the number one quality they're looking for is trust. For the last 32 years, All Good has been trusted to help homeowners replace their windows, install new vinyl siding, install new gutters, and professionally install a new roof like Deborah Ann and I had on our home here in the greater Cincinnati area. All Good offers interest-free financing with payment starting at just $99 a month and no money down. All of All Good's products are professionally installed and, of course, backed by both a material and labor warranty. Right now, All Good is offering a 50% off sale or buy one, get one free. For more details and to schedule a free in-home consultation, simply call 513-247-2900. That's 513-247-2900, or go to their website. It's easy enough to remember, myallgoodhome.com. Back with Jay Morrison. Jay, any other comments from Mike Brown? I don't think we touched on, Mike Brown's comments enough, because again, he doesn't talk all the time. He rarely addresses the media. I love the fact that, he mentioned he's going to be 90 soon. And the thing I like about Mike is when he does talk, I think he's pretty open about his opinions, and he shares what he really feels in his heart. It was interesting to me when he said that people call him a man and a family worth $4 billion. And he's like, I'm not worth $4 billion. I don't know where that number comes from. I just thought that was a funny aside. But did you take anything from his comments about private equity and the Bengals being one of the only NFL teams to vote against private equity? Because for years and years and years, a lot of people have suggested to the Bengals, putting pressure is probably too strong a term for it, but suggested to the Bengals strongly that they bring in private equity to help with some of the capital needs, not just with the roster and the coaching staff and the personnel department, but the stadium as well.
Yeah, because that's where that question from Kelsey Conway about the private equity, that's where the $4 billion quip came from, and that did stand out to me, because his reaction to that was that the reason they voted against it is because he is not interested in maximizing profits. And I thought that was a really interesting line, where he said these other guys, these other owners they're businessmen, and that is their main priority, is maximizing profits. And he said he just wants to have a good football team that the city of Cincinnati can be proud of and that he can enjoy, and not be so focused on just getting every dollar out of it. He said if his goal was to maximize profits, they wouldn't be the Cincinnati Bengals. And that was interesting as well, where this team would have had chances to move, maybe in '97, before Paul Brown Stadium was built, that they would have left town. So that one really kind of stuck out to me, where I don't know that I've heard him talk that way as much. And he said that's his goal, is to give his kids the same opportunity that he has, and that he feels like he has done that. He has set them up, and it is. We talk about it all the time. He's not your typical owner. It's a family run business, and that is the way he operates. It's not all about the bottom line. It's about having something that you really enjoy as your life's work.
So I guess the devil's advocate part of that would be, to me, it's not about making the profit. It's about raising as much capital as you can from your profits to reinvest into the roster, so that when an issue like Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or now Trey Hendrickson come up, you're like, okay, well, we've got extra cash. We've got, let's say, $10 million extra cash that we can invest in a player like Trey Hendrickson, because we know he's a difference maker, and we can show the fans that we're all in on trying to get that first Vince Lombardi trophy. That's what I think the fans want to hear. And I think over the years, and Jay, you've covered this team far longer than I have, there's a disconnect between the messaging that the fans want to hear and how the Bengals view their day-to-day operation.
Yeah. And what you say is right about reinvesting the profits into the team. And there is a salary cap, and there is only so much you can spend on these guys. But if you have that money on hand, you can you can do more of what's holding up the Trey Hendrickson deal, which is the guaranteed money.
Correct.
The guaranteed money, the salary cap is one thing, but the guaranteed money, you have to have that money on hand. That money has to be put in escrow to make sure it is truly guaranteed. And that is something where you're right. If you get an investment, a minority, I think it can't be more than 10% investment of any team.
I don't know the numbers, but
yeah, but that would help with that, where you would have more cash on hand and you would be able to do that. And, that's one of the reasons they sold the naming rights to Paycor Stadium, so they'd have money on hand to handle Joe Burrow's guaranteed money. So, and they could do more too if they had that money to work with. They could do more to upgrade the stadium and not have to rely on the taxpayer money and the whole thing that's going on with that lease negotiation. And it would definitely help them in that regard. But it's kind of like when Paul Brown never wanted the team to be turned over. That's why they've never had an actual GM. And that also, if you're selling 10% of the investment in the team, it feels like you're giving a piece of it away. And I think that is part of the reluctance as well.
All right, before we wrap it up here with Jay Morrison of BengalsTalk.com and SI.com, some news and notes from Monday. First of all, the injury, perhaps the most encouraging note is that Dax Hill is not starting the season on PUP. Zach Taylor confirmed that. Both Hills will be active and available for the team, though their workload will be very closely monitored at the start of camp, which makes sense given the foot injury that BJ Hill is coming off of in training camp. OTAs in the spring. And the ACL that Dax Hill suffered last October against Baltimore. There was an ankle injury that we found out from Evan McPherson, but that happened during one of those rainy OTA periods, I believe it was in April, I think, or April or May, whenever that was. And he tweaked his ankle, had to miss a couple of OTA practices, but Darren Simmons confirmed for us on Monday that he's good to go. He'll be fine. No need to bring in another kicker like a Cade York. Evan McPherson should be good to go for training camp, the preseason, and the regular season, barring any further injury. But you have a story up on BengalsTalk.com about Dax Hill and some of the comments that Al Golden had about him on Monday. What was your takeaway from what Al Golden had to say about Dax Hill in that defense?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing was, he said that it was the rookies were allowed to work out over the weekend and the injured vets, and Dax was part of that. And he said he full speed, looked great, and he made the interesting comment about, because the question's been, where are they going to put him? Is he going to go into the slot? Are they going to ask him to change positions one more time? Or is he going to go back to outside corner where he was playing really well last year? And Al said just the fact that he can do both makes us a better team, and that they have a static roster, but they for guys that can go from inside to outside corner or go from inside to safety is so valuable. And that is I don't know if it's the plan for Dax to move him around, but the just knowing that option is there, I think is important. And I would expect him to be at outside corner. He was playing so well last year, and put him back where he's comfortable, where he was excelling, and go from there. But you're right in that they're going to take him slow early, but I think he'll grant. A couple of years ago, Chidobe Awuzie was coming off an ACL, and they really, I thought they went too slow with him. It was a long time before they got him back in the mix. And his injury was week 8. Dax's was week 5. So Dax has almost a month more recovery under him. But the BJ Hill thing, Zach made it sound like we're not going to see much of him in training camp at all. They are going to bring him along very, very slowly, and they know what they have in BJ Hill, and there's no
reason to push that.
Yeah,
none.
No, he doesn't need the reps in practice. They just want to make sure he's ready for week 1 at Cleveland.
Also, while I'm thinking of it, any thoughts on who the 3 defensive, if it's three defensive captains are going to be, because they've lost all three on the defensive side of the ball from last year, and you don't see that very often.
No, you don't. I would think Logan's a lock.
Yeah.
And then it's a big question because, how long does Trey hold out? And if he holds out, are they going to be voting him a captain if he misses most of training camp? That would be odd. Where do you go from there? I mean,
I know you asked Dax Hill this question in the spring, and I thought it was a terrific question, whether or not Dax sees himself as a captain or captain material.
Yeah, and that could be. He could step into that role. I think of the corners, he's the most likely. A sleeper, I don't know if he's still too young, but Jordan Battle has that about him. I think he's a future captain in this league, and he was at Alabama, and he said as a rookie, I remember talking to him about this, and he said that was one of the biggest struggles of his rookie year is he wanted to be that guy. He wanted to be vocal and be a leader the way he was in college, but you have to kind of defer to the veterans when you come in as a rookie, and he had to kind of learn to kind of quiet himself. And so that'll be really interesting to see if he can step up. I don't know. Geno Stone can be you were just asked to take a pay cut. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that vote comes down, because Logan for sure. And then after
BJ Hill.
Yeah, you're right. I do. I think he means a lot to that defensive line for sure. The young guys gravitate towards him. Yeah. He's been around long enough. He's gotten 2 huge extensions from the Bengals. So that's a good point. That I think BJ and Logan, and then you kind of see where the third one goes.
Anything else you're working on as we sit here on the eve of training camp opening 2025?
I am just working on getting ready for the first practice tomorrow and standing in the heat for 2 hours. And I'm glad it's here, but I will be glad when it's over as well, because it is a little bit of a grind. But no other job I'd rather be doing.
No kidding. You and me both. I've got my banana shirt, and I've got an addendum to the outfit this year that I will surprise and pop on everybody. I think Thursday's a good day, because I think it was you who said yesterday you don't want to usurp or overplay opening day. The opening day of training camp is its own beast, its own animal. Yeah. Let that go, get that out of the way, and then maybe lighten the mood a little bit on Thursday or Friday.
I hope it's banana sneakers or a banana bucket hat to go with the banana shirt.
You might be right on one of those two guesses, and I'm not going to tell you which. All right. He is Jay Morrison, does a great job, along with James Rapine on BengalsTalk.com. And also, please plug, Jay, if you will, the podcast that you do with Paul Dehner Jr.
Yeah, the Growler podcast, PD and Jay. We just recorded another episode before I jumped on here with you, Trags. We'll be doing live shows before all the home games this year at BetMGM. We'll be doing the walkout. So lots of ways to listen to Bengals coverage there. And you can follow me on X. I almost said Twitter. I can't believe I'm still going back to Twitter, but on X at by Jay Morrison.
All right. It has been a pleasure the past 38 minutes. I can't believe I asked you 38 minutes of your time on the day before training camp opens, but I'm very, very grateful. His name is Jay Morrison. Follow him on BengalsTalk.com. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. I want to thank our sponsors, as always, All Good Home Improvement and Prize Picks. Until next time, keep that jungle roaring.